Good evening. I'm John Lester, the Chamber President-elect and the Journal Advertising Manager, and your MC this evening. I'd like to welcome all the audience and remind everyone that this is being streamed live on Mason Web TV and Hood Canal Communications, who are our co-sponsors along with the Shelton Mason County Journal. All candidates have agreed ahead of time that we will be addressing them by their first names. I'd like to begin with introducing Mike Sheets and Carl Dennison, who are candidates for PUD 1, District 1. If you would come and take your place in the podium, please.
You're Carl Dennison. Oh, they got names on them?
Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. Oh, Carl, go first, please.
Okay, well, thanks for coming out tonight. It's been an honor to serve the ratepayers of Mason PUD 1 for the last 11 years. I've still got some gas in the tank, and I think I've contributed a lot, so I hope to serve another 6 years. My whole thing has been about basically 3 legs of the stool. Fiscal responsibility to both the PUD and the ratepayers, improving our infrastructure, reliability, dependability, and also maintaining local control, fighting back onerous regulations. To give you an example of some of the accomplishments I've been responsible for this last 11 years, on the infrastructure improvement, we've done a lot of underground replacements, we've built a new substation, and we've done a lot of substation improvements. We've also worked to improve our water systems by replacing a lot of water lines. On the fiscal responsibility, I pushed hard for AMR reading, that's automatic meter reading, which that reduced an FTE. A 2-year pay plan for line extensions for water hookups, a latecomers agreement for line extensions, so if you're the first one in, and other people hook up, you don't get, you're not on the hook for paying all those costs. You're going to get paid back on a prorated basis over time. And then on the local control, there's numerous things. I was president of the PUD Association, and we pushed back hard on sprinklers. There was a bill that would require sprinklers. We pushed back so it left it up to local control. It was going to be statewide, and everybody was going to have to sprinklers for new residents. And I guess my time's up.
Is there a
Mike?
timer someplace that we know? Oh, gotcha. Okay. Okay. Now? All right. So I'm from Shelton, grew up in Shelton, graduated Irene S. Reed High School in 1972. My wife Marina, married in 1975, moved to Seattle and Tacoma for 10 years, had 3 boys, raised them, moved back to Mason County. And they all went to school in Shelton, and let's see, they all have good jobs, families. My youngest son, Zach, is a lineman in North Carolina, and right now he's in South Carolina helping after the hurricane. I went to Tacoma Community College, Grace Harbor Community College, and Green River College back in the day, taking business management classes, and then I took a correspondence course from Cornell University at one point. Was in the grocery business for 17 years, 12 of which was in management. I managed a small pharmacy chain. I was general manager for almost 17 years. 2004, we bought Alderbrook Country Store out in Union, and Marina and I had that for the last 12 years, and we just sold it last spring. And so now I'm kind of retired, so that's kind of why I'm pushing to do this, something to do. And I do fully understand the budget, expenditures, and personnel issues, and have managed businesses with up to 50 employees for about 40 years. I served on the Southside School Board of Directors for 2 terms back in the 1990s. We received state honors twice, the board did. We went through the hiring process for a superintendent principal. I was appointed, then later elected to Mason County Fire District 6 Board of Commissioners, and I currently serve there. I firmly believe in term limits. Carl is finishing up a 2nd term. That's 12 years. It's time for a little new leadership and ideas. Need to look at expenditures, travel being a priority, and trim where it's beneficial to the utility, work hard on getting managed water systems updated and keep the service to the communities top notch. In this day and age, conservation is our resources is job one. So communications to the ratepayers through newsletters, billing statements, social media, etc. And I'm not a government bureaucrat, so there you go,
Okay.
that's me.
Our first question this evening be to Mike. Have the opportunity to give your answer, and then Carl, you're going to be able to have 2 minutes to give your answer following that.
Okay.
I-937 requires public utility districts to purchase 15% of their energy from renewable resources, such as biomass, solar, and wind. How would you ensure PUD-1 achieves that goal?
I guess by taking a look and seeing what they consider renewable resources. I guess hydropower is not renewable, and that's where most of our resources are. I think right now they're probably looking at getting up to that point, but myself, I wouldn't support that.
Okay, we fought against I-937. It was a voter initiative, and it did pass. One thing good about PUD-1, we're under 25,000 meters, so we do not have to meet the 50% portfolio standard, although there are moves afoot to put all PUDs, regardless of size or how many meters you have, under I-937. We pushed back real hard against this. It's crazy that hydro is not a renewable resource. Hydro is what backs up all this intermittent wind and solar. The truth, the dirty little secret about wind, it's only available for peak demand less than 3% of the time. So it's a feel-good thing. As far as solar, it's much more dependable, but here in the Northwest, we live in a pretty cloudy area, so it really doesn't fit. Although it does work better on the east side, but the west side, it's less than 10% efficient. So really, the future is hydro, and we've got folks that want to tear out the Snake River dams. My father worked on those dams. He helped build them, and I'm going to fight real hard to oppose that. We also have clean nuclear. Nuclear produces no carbon, and we've got folks that are trying to shut down the one nuclear plant we have in the state, and that's Columbia Generation Station in Olympia. And I have served on the Public Participants Review Board over there. We've made major investments in that station. We've improved the quality and the improvement of it, and I'm going to fight real hard that we keep that. It makes no sense to shut down a resource that is providing clean energy.
Thank you. Second question, Carl, you'll be asked first, and Mike, you'll follow with a 2-minute answer. What is the biggest challenge facing PUD number 1, and how will you plan to address it?
I think the biggest challenge right now is onerous regulation. We're being attacked, public power is being attacked on all fronts. As I mentioned, the Snake River Dam removal, shutting down nuclear, this constant renewable. Well, renewables are good, but I think energy resources should be technology neutral. We shouldn't be just favoring wind and solar. There's a lot of other resources. There's geothermal, there's hydro, as I said. That's our bread and butter here in the Northwest, and we should have that as a renewable resource. And what was I forgot what the main question was.
How would you plan to address it? Was just for the biggest challenge facing?
I guess, so that's one challenge. The other challenge is aging infrastructure. And we had a really good funding pot here in the state. It was a Public Works Trust Fund. It was a renewable fund that we got money back from the low interest loans, and the legislature in their wisdom rated that. And I'm going to fight real hard to get that reinstituted, because we need, in a rural area like this, we need low cost, cheap money to replace all the aging infrastructure that we're faced with. We run a really lean, tight budget at PUD-1. We've worked on reducing our costs. Mike talked about fiscal and looking at our fiscal. We run a tight ship. We just had an opportunity to replace FTE, our auditor. We've gone out contract now. That's saving us money. We've reduced FTEs by automating. We've got a new credit card company, Visa, that cut our Visa payments in half. So we're doing everything we can to reduce our costs
Thank you.
while
Mike?
maintaining infrastructure and improving it.
Mike?
So I think one of the main things that the PUD has got facing them right now is they manage a lot of water systems. The electrical side, they do a great job. I mean, we all just figured that out during the windstorm last week. We were without power for a little while, but those guys were on it and got us back up pretty quick. Water, on the other hand, we were out of water for a whole day where I live. There's a whole lot of different water systems. I can't remember the number, but that PUD manages. And I think in talking about aging infrastructure, I think there's a lot of aged infrastructure in those water systems. We were just at a meeting here a couple of weeks ago, and it talked about some of the wells being 40 plus years old, some of the pumps in those wells. The piping in the ground, same, 40, 50 years old, and needing to be upgraded. Well, that should be a priority in my book. I mean, people in their water comes before electricity as far as I'm concerned, but you have to have electricity to pump the well. So anyway, that's, I think, what we need to look at to fix as soon as possible on all of those, and then keep it up to snuff so that all the communities have top-notch water service.
Do I get a rebuttal?
Okay. No.
I don't?
No.
Well, that's what the direction said. So.
So now we'll each end up having closing remarks, 1 minute for that. So Carl, we'll start with you.
Okay. I agree with Mike that we do need to improve our water systems. We inherited all these water systems. So they were, a lot of them were failing systems when we got them. We've been aggressively trying to upgrade them. As far as when you run out of electricity, we've gone out to the public and we said, do you want to invest in a generator? Well, generators cost a lot of money and they have to be maintained. So we've been putting our focus on trying to improve the electric so the water is up, because some of these systems, certain people are out of water if they're too high on the system, like above the reservoir. But a lot of our systems, the bulk of the people still have water. It's just a certain few that are cut out, and we've done some public meetings and we've done some emergency measures to provide a hydrant where they could go get water on an emergency basis. But it's all about money, and we're trying to keep the rates as low as possible, but we go to the public. If they want to invest in it, we'll do it.
Thank you. Mike?
So I didn't really say it in the beginning. I kind of did at the end. I'm not a career bureaucrat or a politician. My background is in the private sector, in business management and business ownership. I think I'm qualified for the position at PUD1. I'm a quick learner, valued team member if I'm there. I believe in term limits. The elected positions should not be careers. I agree with Carl on the water systems. Not all the water systems have people without water when the power goes out. We happen to be one of them, so I said it. But and I'd like to thank you very much. I'd be honored if I got your vote. Thanks.
Thank you both. At this time, I would like to ask Dan Griffey and Irene Bowling to come forward. They're the 35th District State Representative, Position 1. The format for this and the rest of the candidates is going to be slightly different. There will be a 2-minute answer and a 2-minute rebuttal or response, but followed by a 1-minute rebuttal at the end. So that format is slightly different than previously.
We're getting used to it.
You sure are.
We'll end up having 2-minute opening statements from each of the candidates. Dan, we'd like you to begin, please.
Good evening. Thank you to the organizers tonight. I would just say the chamber, but last time I said that, I left out a couple organizations. So thank you to the organizers. Also thank you to the audience members tonight. It is my great privilege to serve you as state representative in the 35th District. It's more than a privilege, it's an honor. I love what I do in Olympia. I currently serve on the local government, the public safety, and the K-12 education policy committee. It doesn't deal with money, it doesn't deal with how we're going to fund McCleary, however I have ideas on what we're going to do there. But it deals with how we're going to get the policy burdens off the back of our schools. So those policy burdens that are actually costing a lot of money that are actually not necessary any longer. On the Public Safety Committee, I'm working on a lot of things to keep our community safe, but the number one issue I'm working on is making sure that in Washington State, if you commit a sex crime, that one, you have to worry about being prosecuted for that sex crime your entire life. And two, let's get more robust about how we're going to look after and find those people that are committing these crimes through DNA evidence, and making sure that we do an aggressive collection of that evidence, and that it's in a setup where our prosecutors can actually prosecute for those crimes, and we can put those people away. It's a crime that actually injures the person that the crime was committed on for the rest of their life. On the local government committee, I continue to work for some sense and sensibility in our Growth Management Act, make sure that local governments can manage their own growth. We can do it. All too often Olympia thinks that only Olympia can do it. Well, no, we can do a way better job, and we can have a growth management policy that fits for us and that allows that we can grow in our local communities. And my time is up. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dan. Irene?
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm a small business owner. I've had a very successful business for the last 36 years. I'm married to the same man for the last 37 years, and I have 3 college-age students. I'm 59 years old, and I'll tell you truthfully why I'm running. I am tired of waiting for other people to get things done, especially for our county here in Mason County. My uncles were loggers here. My parents worked at PSNS. We have bad roads. We have lots of infrastructure problems that people have been talking about forever. We have the Belfair sewer problem. We have the Belfair bypass problem. We have schools where kids don't even have books compared to schools in Bellevue or Mercer Island. We have in Kitsap County multiple amount of problems, and also in the rural part of Thurston County. So I'm here before you today to tell you that I'm tired of waiting. I'm not getting any younger. I'm no spring chicken anymore. And 59, it's long enough to wait. And so I plan on making some big changes in this area. As an educator, I've been a teacher for over 40 years, and I understand teaching. I understand our education system. I understand what it is to be a member of a community, especially this community, for my whole life. And I understand the issues here in Mason County, Thurston County, and Kitsap County. And that's why I'm running. So thank you very much.
Thank you. First question to both candidates. Irene, will ask you to answer first, please. The Washington Supreme Court's McCleary decision pushed education funding into the spotlight. Since then, we have heard a number of alternatives of funding education. What do you favor? Do you support additional revenues to fully fund education? You have 2 minutes.
The funding education is a major problem. That's one of the main reasons I'm running, because I have been an educator for over 40 years. There are tax exemptions for big corporations and tax loopholes that no longer prove effective that we need to be tapping into. Right there, we have over $1.2 billion that we can put into education funding. We also need to try to help small business. As a small business owner, I'm very, very cognizant of the tax problems, the B&O. I want to reform that. We need to bring more business and encourage business. The more small business we have, the more revenue we have in the state. We need to cut down on some of the expenses that the school systems have. For instance, the ridiculous amount of testing, millions of dollars of wasted revenue right there. We need to let the supervisors know that if they're going to be making the kind of salaries they do, they better produce something with it. So there are lots of things. We need to do it from the top to the bottom. We need to renovate and change a lot of things in our education system. We need to find revenue through corporations that should be paying their fair share, not on the backs of the middle class or the working class. I also think that a levy swap might be very beneficial for the 35th, which means that we have one basic tax, property tax, and that money will be distributed throughout the whole state. So that means that your kids here in Mason County will have the same opportunities and the same financial stability that kids over in Bellevue will have. I don't think that's a bad idea, and I certainly would investigate that thoroughly.
Thank you. Dan?
So the solution to McCleary, if I had a crystal ball, it would be good, and I'd tell you exactly what we're going to come up with, but I'm going to give you an idea what I think we're going to come up with. We're going to do some form of levy swap and levy equalization, so all levies in the state of Washington will be the same, and the state will take that burden, because the premise behind McCleary was there's an over-reliance on local levies to provide for basic education, so the best way to do that is for the state to remit that money. The next thing that I think that we really have an obligation to do is to give our schools some significant reforms in what we're requiring of them, because we require a lot of money in superfluous rules and regulations that they have to comply with. One of those is our rigorous and not useful any longer testing scheme that we have in the state of Washington. Most of our schools have 3 weeks of state standardized testing they have to go through. I support a change that those testing requirements and oversight would be done in the classroom. When you do your weekly, monthly, and chapter quizzes, we'll take the software and we'll align it with the state standards. So that way we can be very quick in, if somebody is low capable, we can send some resources to them to make sure that that low capable student is taken care of. If they're high capable, then we can give them some more challenging work. But it'd be a very much robust system, way better than what we're currently doing. We won't waste those excessive amounts of money that we're doing on standardized testing. It'll give us actionable data to where we can actually help those kids right when they need it, instead of waiting for the test results that could be up to 8 months down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
That was perfect.
Irene?
Wow.
You have 1 minute. A rebuttal.
I agree with most of the things that Mr. Griffey says. However, I don't think that it's enough. I think that we have to go after this additional revenue, which I have mentioned as these tax loopholes. And many people over the last 3 years have brought this up in both caucuses as a bipartisan opportunity, and Mr. Griffey apparently does not agree with that. So I think we're missing a golden opportunity, and if I get in the legislature, I will definitely pursue that avenue, in addition to the other things that have been mentioned this evening.
Thank you. Second question, Dan, you'll answer first. What could the legislature do next session to immediately help small business survive and thrive?
Well, there's several things we can do. My opponent keeps talking about the tax loopholes that are ineffectual. The other day we were at the Olympians editorial review board, and we were asking what we could do for economic development, and her first answer was we could give some tax breaks to those companies that and incentivize them into moving to Mason County. Well, one of the biggest problems is that's what happens all the time. We talk about these tax breaks, the businesses get established, they get functioning on that level, and then we come back in and say, oh, that loophole's no longer necessary, that those jobs that you are providing with that do not function. So there's no predictable, stable business environment in Washington State. So the best thing we can do is have long-term, predictable, stable regulatory and tax climate, so our businesses and business owners can then know with certainty that when they invest money in an area, that money is going to go for long-term. They can then not have to worry about continuously changing rules that they have to comply with, changing taxes that they have to comply with. I support the local EDC's effort to do a workforce inventory. How many skills are currently out there in the 35th district still? Do we still have some aerospace skills left? Leveraging our assets out here. We have an airport in Shelton that can actually land a very large airplane, a larger airplane that can be landed in the Olympia airport. We have a 4-lane highway of Highway 101 that can move goods and services quickly and very efficiently. We also have lots of land, and we have some sewer and water capacity that we need to leverage out here, and I'm supporting those efforts, and I think those efforts would encourage economic development here and stability into the future. Thank you.
May I clarify your question? Were you talking about small business? Or
To help small business survive and thrive.
Small business survive and thrive. Okay, so number one, I am not talking about small business and tax loopholes. I'm not talking about small business and taxes. I'm talking about in many cases, multinational companies that are making billions of dollars here in the state. For instance, when we give a tax break, like the legislature did to Boeing, and then they promptly set 7,000 jobs out of the state, that's not right. So if we are going to give kickbacks, and that's what I call it, kickbacks to major corporations, then they have the responsibility, and our legislature has this responsibility to keep those jobs in Washington state. I don't see why the taxpayer should be paying double. So I just want to clarify that before we talk about small business. Small business. First of all, we don't have good roads in and out of this area. That has to be addressed immediately. That money that's going into Seattle and other places throughout the state, we need legislators that are going to fight and get results and bring these roads up to par. We need fast, safe, and efficient transportation. Rail. I just talked to the Railroads Union last week, and I had many very interesting ideas that I was talking about with BNSF, the freight situation here. We need to develop our ports. We have that SKIA area that's huge, that industrial thing. People have been sitting on their thumbs on that for years. We need to develop that and get that going. So there are many, many things that we can do for small business, but transportation, good education, expanding Olympic College here in this area, because if we don't have a good college and good education situation, people aren't going to want to move into this area. We also have to have affordable housing for our workers. People don't have, if they have low-paying jobs, they don't even have a place to live here in this area. Real estate is way too expensive, and also that Belfair sewer thing is a big disaster. So,
Thank you.
Few things.
Thank you. Dan, you have 1 minute rebuttal.
So Highway 101 is a very good highway. It was just overlaid. It's a beautiful highway to drive on, and it can move goods and services very quickly, and we need to leverage it now. Do we need some more infrastructure help? Absolutely, but we need to leverage what we have that is very good and very functional right now. A wonderful airport, wonderful roads to move goods and services, again, that was just overlaid, that's in perfect condition. When it comes to large, my opponent talked about tax breaks for large corporations. I feel the pain. I think maybe we should have worked in the Boeing deal some job, the job retention numbers. But we didn't do that. Boeing pays about $15.5 billion in direct salaries and benefits in this state. I do not want to take a chance on losing that. So going forward, absolutely, we need to do probably a little better job and negotiate like the other states did that with guaranteed jobs. But man, we cannot put in jeopardy those wages. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, each candidate will have the chance to ask a question of his or her opponent. Dan, you'll pose your question to Irene first. Irene, you will have 2 minutes to answer, and then Dan, you will have 1 minute to respond.
So I'd like to ask my opponent if a capital gains tax is an income tax.
I don't agree with an income tax or a capital gains tax, and I don't agree with the B&O tax. In fact, I'm against tax, period. And I know that Mr. Griffey's been trying to trip me up on this for a long time here. And basically, this is what our 7th debate here. But I want to make that clear, that I think that we can work with what we've got, and we've got to get the big guys to pay more to help the rest of us. So I don't agree with that at all, and that's not it at all. Yeah.
At those several of those forums, 3 to be exact, my opponent mentioned a capital gains tax as one of those loopholes that she would like to see closed, and I believe it was probably because she was just reading from a list that was produced by the House Democrat caucus. But But I'm glad to know that she believes that a capital gains tax is an income tax. Thank you, because it is. A lot of times people don't have the luxury of having a pension like I do, and so they invest their money in land. They invest their money in the stock market. They achieve a gain, and that's what they retire on. And to be honest with you, we don't tax retirements in Washington State. Thank you.
Thank you. Irene, now you will pose a question to Dan. Dan, you'll have 2 minutes to answer, and then Irene, you will have 1 minute to respond.
Right. Well, I have the advantage over Dan in this way is that he has a voting record. Because I'm not in office yet, I don't have a voting record, so I just wanted to bring up there are many things that I disagree with on what Mr. Griffey voted for, but there's one in particular that puzzles me and that kind of hits home for me in particular because I have two parents that are in their 90s, and also my husband just suffered a major heart attack and is on several medications. So this has to do with medicine, and it has to do with a task force that was brought up, House Bill 2871, that Mr. Griffey was one of 16 people that voted against this. This actually eventually got in, but what it is, it was a task force on high patient out-of-pocket costs. So I know that many of you probably in this audience, and certainly this has hit my family on many different fronts, a lot of people cannot afford the high pharmaceutical costs that they have. And so this was a bill that was going to try to get a task force going that would try to put pharmaceuticals feet to the fire. Furthermore...
Irene, question, please.
Yes, so my question is, why are you accepting from many Altria, Prevera, Blue Cross, many of these different companies, campaign contributions and voting against, even though you're a minority in both the House, and voting against this bill?
So the reason I voted against that bill is we already have the solutions in place, and we did not need to study it at all. We needed to pass the good measures that would have allowed for us to buy our drugs from Canada on Medicaid. It would allow us to very robustly reduce the costs. Instead of studying it like we do in Olympia every time, I voted against the study bill, and I wanted to fix it because we have fixes in place. Again, one of the big fixes that we were looking at was having our Medicaid patients being able to buy over the mail order from Canada, which would save almost 40% the prescription drug prices. So I voted against the bill to do another study so we could actually fix it right now. Thank you.
So you voted against a bill that's based on American soil, so we have to get our drugs from out of the country in order to pay for our drugs? I don't understand the logic behind this, and I think that unless we have legislators that are actually going to go after the big insurance companies that are ripping us off for our pharmaceuticals, if we can't make even the first step on that, we're never going to change. And I, for one, don't want to have to go to Canada to buy my drugs. Thank you very much.
You don't have to. You can actually do it over the internet. Thank you.
Well, that solves the problem, doesn't it?
Now we have time for our closing remarks, please. Dan, you have 1 minute.
So again, thank you to the organizers of this, and thank you to the audience members. It is definitely an honor and a privilege for me to serve you in Olympia as your state representative. We have tackled so many big items. I passed a bill that fundamentally reformed how basic firefighter education happens so we could better leverage our local dollars. A lot of people don't understand this or don't know this, but you pay a tax on every fire insurance premium that you purchase in the state of Washington, and that goes directly to pay for firefighter training. We were able to pass that bill. I was able to get bipartisan support to remove the statute of limitations on sex crimes. It passed out of our committee and died because of the short session in monetary committee, but I'm working very hard with the task force to make sure that that those crimes are going to continue to be on the front burner, and we're going to do something about it. Again, it is an honor and privilege for me to serve as your state representative of Olympia, and I would appreciate your vote so I can go back and finish the work. Thank you so much. Perfect again. Wow.
You have 1 minute.
Yes, thank you. I'm running because I don't agree with Mr. Griffey's voting record. He voted against equal pay for women, accommodations for pregnant workers, for injured workers to receive their fair Social Security benefits. He's voted against increasing the minimum wage and a retirement savings program for small business. He's voted against cracking down on unfair student lending, providing safe and sick leave for workers, the Voting Rights Act, and the list kind of goes on and on. That's why I'm standing here in front of you here this evening. That's why I drove an hour and a half through horrible traffic, I might add, through our bad roads from Silverdale all the way down here, because I will not vote for those things. I will vote for the working class and for the rights of the people in this community, for their education, for their health, for health benefits like decent, not having to pay an arm and a leg for 6 different medications like my husband's on right now. You know, we can't afford it. And things are going up, and we need legislators that are going to fight for everybody in this room and everybody in this area. And I will do that. Thank you very much.
I thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan.
I now would like to welcome to the podium Drew McEwen and Craig Patty, who are the candidates for the 35th District State Representative, Position 2. Again, there will be a 2-minute answer, a 2-minute response, and a 1-minute rebuttal for the first 2 questions. You have 2-minute opening statements. Drew, you would begin, please.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight, and thank you to the Chamber and whoever else may be sponsoring tonight. Appreciate it, and it's good to bring these to a conclusion. We've been doing this since June with these forums, and but I appreciate the opportunity to once again make my case to you, the voters. When you elected me in 2012, I ran on K-12 education, strengthening the economy, and state government reform. And I'm proud of the legislation I've had signed into law in all 3 of those areas. On K-12, we've increased the funding by the largest percentage since 1980. We reduced higher education costs by 20%. On state government reform, I was happy to have a bill signed into law that reformed the state VA system and expanded benefits to our National Guard and Airmen and cut out a lot of the red tape that was there previously, and we added efficiencies so that the state VA is operating at a much better pace. Did reforms in labor and industries to help small business owners. That came directly from a constituent in Seebeck. I came out here via the Navy in 1994, as did a lot of people in this district, thousands of people that then chose to make this their home afterwards. And I'm proud of that. And I'll never forget the first day coming across on the ferry. And we have the largest ferry system in the state. And just seeing that site there in Kitsap and going to my sub in Bangor. And choosing to come back here after my Navy time and making this home. And starting a business and sending my kids to school. They both went to school here, graduated from Shelton. They're both in the Marine Corps now. Chose to make this home, like many veterans that finished their time. And I look forward to continuing to serve you in the legislature in Olympia and continuing to work on K-12, on state government reform, and on strengthening our economy. And I ask for your vote and look forward to your questions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Craig?
All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. My name is Craig Patty, and I'm running for position 2. I'm a lifelong resident of the 35th District, and what makes, I guess, my history unique is I was born and raised in the Thurston County portion. I actually set that up for a little bit. About 11 years ago, I became a firefighter in the city of Bremerton, which is in the Kitsap County portion, and 10 years ago, my wife and I moved to Allen, which obviously here in Mason County. So I have a very unique perspective, having either worked or lived in each portion of this district. The 3 counties that make up the district are pretty independent of each other. What's good for Kitsap isn't necessarily what's good for Mason, it's not necessarily what's good for Thurston. Having my background, having my history, I think gives me a really unique perspective and a genuine commitment to taking care of all 3 areas of this district. They all deserve equal representation. When my wife Katie and I moved out to the North Mason area, it's kind of what led me to run for office. I became a member of the North Mason School Board, and during that time, as the McCleary decision was kind of coming out, we kind of I saw firsthand the interactions between our state legislature and our local school districts, and I thought it was pretty poor, to say it best. In that time, I don't know that enough progress has been made on that. Obviously, I don't think so, or else I wouldn't be here. In 2013, I was part of the group that was able to work together to bring our community together and pass a bond to build the new North Mason High School and do some other facility improvements. So I have a history of getting things done, of working together, bringing people together, and that's what I hope to do in Olympia. Thank you.
Thank you. The first question to both candidates, Craig, I'd like you to answer first, please. You'll have 2 minutes. There's been talk of capital gains tax in the next session. There's always talk about closing tax loopholes, and there's a debate about whether additional taxes are necessary for education. What changes, if any, do you support when it comes to the current tax obligations of individuals and businesses in Washington?
Well, I'm not in favor of an income tax, and I do believe a capital gains is a version of the income tax. Not to recite already hashed out remarks, but we do have numerous tax exemptions in this state. About 650 equals about $30 billion every 2 years. These are, I believe, becomes a value statement of Washington in general. What do we value? Do we value these exemptions on a taxing structure that already hurts the lower income the most? Or do we decide, hey, we need to start equaling this out, bringing some of this revenue back in, lowering the burden on the rest of us, and reinvesting in ourselves? So that's where I go with that. I think when we talk about tax systems and things, you can't hardly get into it in 2 minutes, but fix what we have first, and bring the equality back to making sure that we're all kind of paying our fair share and putting that money where it belongs. I'm not going to stand up here and say each of those tax exemptions doesn't serve a purpose. I believe there's plenty of them that probably do, but I believe there's probably even more that no longer serve the purpose they were intended, or perhaps that risk versus reward doesn't tip the scales anymore.
Thank you. Drew, you have 2 minutes.
I serve on the Joint Legislative Audit Review Committee, and we review the various tax incentives that are there. And one of the objectives are that what was the original intent of the legislature? Is that intent being met today, and does it make sense to continue that? And we have made recommendations on some of those to go away. One was a technology one that directly benefited Microsoft, had more to do with their business model in the mid-'80s, the late '80s, and we as a legislature, based on that recommendation, we ended that, and in working that out with Microsoft. So we have taken those steps. The capital gains completely against it, and has been previously stated by my seatmate, it would drive business out of the state. There would be no incentive. You take all the risk, and then you're going to get taxed for having taken the risk. That's not a fair system either. One of the things I'd really like to see happen in Olympia is a number of sunset provisions, both on the regulatory side and also on the tax side. Let's have a sunset provision for tax incentives and also for tax increases. And let's force a review on those regularly. And I'll take both sides of that equation. I'm not asking for just one biased approach to it. Let's have a sunset for all of that. And the legislature then would have to take proactive steps and to ensure that continuation. I favor that kind of a model. When it comes to, so this all goes back to the McCleary issue and the funding of it. And it's not just about the dollars. Depending on what study you look at, in the state of Washington, we're ranked in the middle of the pack in the 50 states when it comes to our quality of education. When you look at the funding and where states rank, Massachusetts is ranked number 1, spends $15,000 per student. We spend $12,000. So you'd say, well, we raise it by $3,000 per student. We're there. Well, Colorado's number 2, and they spend $9,000 per student. And at 50th place in the nation is Alaska at $20,000 per student. It's not all about the money, and each one of those states has unique challenges to it. It's not all about the money. It's about reform, reinstituting local control, and getting the state government out of the way and letting local districts take control.
Thank you, Drew. Craig, you've got 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you. I'm all for having sunset clauses on these tax exemptions, but once again, we look at some of these exemptions that are out there that have been around since the 1950s, and I ask, why hasn't it been done up to this point? It's really saying, well, let's do this in the future. Well, you have your time there, and here we are. We're still with them. We even have more now, and we can hash out Boeing till we're blue in the face. And I think most of us would agree that the merits of that tax exemption, but it's just an example of giving without looking at the long-term effects of it and what it does to Washington residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Our second question to both candidates. Drew, you answer first, please. Governor Inslee has said climate change is his top priority, but the legislature has repeatedly chosen not to act on his ideas. Governor Inslee responded by directing the Department of Ecology to adopt a clean air rule, which went into effect yesterday. Do you support the governor's actions? Why or why not?
Yeah, and real quick to the previous point that was made, that why haven't I done that in 4 years on those sunset provisions? The Speaker of the House hasn't allowed that vote. That's the bottom line. To this question, do I support the governor? No, I don't. He has once again acted by rule making when he hasn't been able to lead the legislature and he hasn't been able to build consensus. And businesses have worked hard and come to the administration, come to the legislature and say, here are the things that we can do that aren't going to drive jobs out of the state, that's going to protect the environment, that's going to reduce carbon pollution, and he flat out has rejected it. I do not support the governor on this rulemaking authority. We have 22,000 pages of rules right now in the state of Washington. Rulemaking authority was designed to implement laws passed by the legislature, not to implement law. But that is what is happening. That is what the action the governor has taken. And under the governor's plan, you are incentivized to send jobs out of the state. That's the total wrong approach. From 1990 to today, we've increased manufacturing production in the state of Washington by 260%. We've reduced carbon pollution by 16%. And none of that was with the help of Governor Inslee. And this proposal is going to roll that back and lower the jobs in this state, and it's going to have minimal impact on the environment in terms of a positive impact. So no, I do not support it.
Thank you. Craig, you have 2 minutes.
No, I really wish our governor had the same priorities I think most of us have, which is our education system. I'm disappointed in our governor for saying that's his #1 priority. I believe climate change needs to be addressed, don't get me wrong. However, we have some legitimate day-to-day issues in this state that I believe take front and center, as we've discussed. And to speak on the initiative that's coming out there with the carbon tax, I also believe that's to be a poorly or misguided initiative, if you will. It puts a big hole into our already strained budget to the tune of nearly $1 billion. But I also believe that that business, with their specific industries, they're usually the drivers of initiative, of that implementing new processes to be cleaner, to be more expedient, all of which affects the bottom line. I don't believe any more state regulation pushing more regulation down on them to do what is just the course of business and the business cycle will already do. So that's where I stand on that.
Thank you. Now, our third question. Each candidate will now have the chance to ask a question of his opponent. Drew, you'll pose a question to Craig first. Craig, you'll have 2 minutes to answer, and then Drew, you will have 1 minute to respond. Your question, please.
Thank you. So you're running as an independent Democrat, and that you can infer different things from that. But my question to you is, out of 143,000 into your campaign, less than 6,500 of it's from in-district. Over $40,000 of it is from the Seattle area, from particularly the House Democratic Caucus Committee. How do you reconcile being independent with those two figures?
Well, I've never, thank you. And that's a good question. I've never hidden the fact that I am a Democrat. I'm a union member. I believe in the union movement. I believe in the middle class. Up until the recession hit in 2008, I really didn't know what I was party-wise. But once it became a problem that you were a public employee, which I am as a firefighter, once we became an enemy, once having a pension made me an enemy, and then just being in the public safety realm made me an enemy of what seems like the mainstream Republican Party, I definitely knew I was not a Republican. To me, we became scapegoats of a very poor economy. So that kind of drove me to at least know that my basic values were with the Democrat Party. I disagree and conflict with that party quite a bit. Income tax. I know the platform wants a progressive income tax. I don't agree with that. I believe we have a tax structure that can work if it's equitable across the board. Growth Management Act. Democrats don't even want to open up the Growth Management Act, and that's been, for the most part, status quo for 26 years, and Washington's changed a lot in 26 years. The Democrat Attorney General, Bob Ferguson, assault weapons ban. I'm an advocate of being able to arm yourself. And if anyone can give me the exact same definition of what an assault weapon is, I'd be glad to hear it, because there's about 70 people in here. I think I'd get 70 different responses. You can take a hunting rifle and hurt someone, and then technically an assault rifle. So I conflict, and I have a tough time dealing with some of the issues that the Democrat Party does have. But when it comes to aligning my values, there's more in that party. So as for the House Democrat Campaign Caucus, yes, they have given to my campaign, and it's not just all Seattle Democrats. So thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Drew, you have 1 minute.
You know, I think there's a gross mischaracterization of where Republicans stand. I mean, my seatmate is a public employee, and I have the endorsement of 30,000 state employees, state employee union, that have 30,000 workers that go to work for every day. And I was proud to sponsor a bill that actually would change on our PERS structure. Right now, when you go to work for the state, if you don't fill out your HR paperwork, which is most people on your retirement plan, they automatically default you into PERS 3, which is more of a 401k structure. The state employees union asked me, hey, we'd really like it to go to PERS 2. Would you sponsor that? And I did. And PERS 2 is a little more hybrid, has more of a pension component to it. So I just would like to clarify that to suggest that public employees and pension beneficiaries are my enemy is just completely wrong. I continue to go to work every day for them, and will continue to do so, and I think that speaks to why I have their support, including the State Council of Firefighters and the Washington Council of Police and Sheriffs, public employees.
Thank you, Drew. Craig, now you will pose a question to Drew. Drew, you will have 2 minutes to answer, and then Craig, you will have 1 minute to respond. Your question, please.
Yeah, in 2015, you voted to expand the payday lending from what was basically limited to $700 per loan, and to allow it longer term at excessively high interest rates. We've talked back and forth about the minimum wage, things so on and so forth. I'm just kind of curious how, when we talk about our struggling economy and things like that, and how you can vote to expand what many consider to be predatory lending.
Yeah, great question. First of all, when I was in the Navy, I had to use payday loans on a number of occasions. I've had to use them. And this state cracked down on the practice, and justifiably so. There were some gross negligence that were occurring by some lenders. But what happened was it grossly limited people where that was their last resort of a loan. And there is a risk reward when it comes to lending. And typically, when you have a higher risk of not repaying, there's a higher interest rate to that. Is that desirable? Absolutely not. But in some instances, that is the last resort, and the state of Washington had capped both the dollar amount and the number of loans you could actually take in a year, and those protections are still in place. And under federal law now, the military is actually greatly protected. There's a lot of caps that are in place there that federal law has handled. But yeah, we did, because there was a lot of concern from those both that use it and those that provide it, that there was a segment that was not being able to meet some of their financial needs because they weren't able to access those loans anymore. Is it the ideal source? Absolutely not. Wish I never had to use them. I got 2 sons in the Marine Corps. I hope they never have to use them, although they seem to find my phone number still. But so that was why that vote was taken.
Thank you. Craig, you have a minute.
Yeah, I think when we talk about how the law originally was, you're talking about a maximum of $700, and after that term period, which was about 2 weeks, you would pay just under $800 for that loan after your interest and such. Now, because of different fees that have been allowed into it, that same $700 loan can end up costing you an extra $1,600 onto that, because the interest rates combined and the effective interest rate is now over 200%. So to me, I don't understand, and that promotes a cycle of getting into debt, and they have the default rates of over 50%. And when you talk about, you asked me about my contributors. When you have the CEO of of Money Tree and, those corporations contributing to your campaign, it's hard to understand where your loyalty lies in that.
Thank you. We'll now have 1 minute closing remarks. Drew, begin with you, please.
1 minute?
1 minute.
All right. Well, thank you again for being here. I live with the consequences of Olympia every day as a business owner. When you got to sign the front of a paycheck, 24 to 30 of them every 2 weeks, it really puts into perspective what you have to handle both on the regulatory side, on the tax side. I've spearheaded B&O tax reform. I'm going to continue to do that. We need to lower the rates, broaden the base. That will help our economy significantly. We have an inconsistent regulatory structure that squashes small businesses. As a business owner, I bring that perspective to Olympia that is sorely missed today. I'm going to continue to work on K-12 reform. One of the solutions in the McCleary issue is expanding our Running Start program. We get 2 for 1 with that. We can put more money into our community colleges, and it alleviates a lot of the pressure on the schools, on the K-12 system, because we can have kids that are working simultaneously on a degree and getting high school credit and graduate with 2. That is one solution that I'm greatly looking forward to working on. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to have served you these last 4 years. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and I look forward to returning and ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Craig?
Well, thank you everyone being here. Thank you, Drew. Honestly, the last 4 or 5 months have been very, very interesting. A lot of an educational piece for me too as a new candidate. As a lifelong resident here, I've seen where the 35th has been, and I see where we can go. And I believe that with my history of bringing people together and working through our issues, I think the 35th can be the best again. It's a very unique district. But we have some challenges that we need to overcome. We need to fully fund our schools, and I think we need to build a transportation network that moves people, and we need to create policies in Olympia that protect our natural resources but also promote growth. We have a wealth of opportunity in this district, our natural resources, our waterways, just our buildable land. And knowing that on the other side of the water, they're just about built up, that growth has to come somewhere. So we need to be there, open arms, for that growth to come our way, but do it in a very, very smart way. I look forward, I hope I can have your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. We'll now take a break between 7:20 and 7:25 between the legislative and commissioner candidates. 5 minutes. Okay. 5 minute break. I'm sorry, 5 minute break.
Are you looking for an affordable TV service option?
Hood Canal Communications has good news.
Introducing HCC IPTV.
Get local Seattle TV at an affordable price without lengthy contracts or hidden fees.
IPTV uses your broadband connection from HCC.
For a limited time, get your first 3 months for free.
Need broadband? HCC has got you covered. Ask about broadband options in your area. Call 898-2481 today.
Learn more at hcc.net.
Hood Canal Communications, keeping our community connected.
Vehicle collisions are the #1 killer of teens in the U.S., taking 8 young lives every day. And speeding is a factor in more than half of teen fatal car crashes, but we can prevent these tragedies. Talk with your teen about staying safe behind the wheel. Remind them to follow the speed limit and adjust their driving for road conditions. Keep the conversation going and be the driver you want your teen to be. It's not just good parenting, it's a matter of life or death.
The living room. It's a great place to watch TV. Just like your backyard, break time at the office, or waiting for your ride. Now you can watch TV everywhere. Stream your favorite shows or live TV from many channels in your cable package on any computer, tablet, or smartphone. It's all included in Hood Canal Communications TV service for no extra cost. Sign up to watch TV everywhere today. Call or visit Hood Canal Communications online to learn more.
Slow down.
And this is
Slow down.
John's mic.
And move
Is that
over.
better?
And move over. When you see lights,
Vests. Or reflectors.
please give us some room. Slow down and move over. When you need us,
We've got your back.
do you have ours?
You got our back?
You got ours? You got our back? Please, slow down.
And move over.
Oh, look, a redhead. Staring contest. You still got it. I know.
Come alive with the forest.
The dad was cute.
You were looking right at us. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a forest near you.
I have a one.
Got a little bit of kick to it.
Houston, do you copy?
Can I get everyone to have a seat, please? We'll get started in just a few seconds.
Here we go. For me.
I'd now like to welcome to the podiums Randy Netherland and Kelly McIntosh. They are both running for the Mason County Commissioner District Number 1. Again, this will end up being, questions will be a 2-minute answer, 2-minute response, and then a 1-minute rebuttal. We have a 2-minute opening statements. Kelly, you can please go first.
Well, thank you, John. Thank you for this evening. Folks, this is for our candidacy. This is our last debate of the year, so I think a couple of us are probably pretty excited about that. Many of you probably have had the opportunity already to read about me or hear about me, so I don't want to spend too much time on my background. I am a 25-year criminal justice professional, and here in Mason County, I have been a 15-year fire commissioner with what is now the North Mason Regional Fire Authority, which covers most of the Belfair and Tahuya Peninsula area. One of the things that I do want to talk about in my introduction this evening is the fact that we understand that the role of county commissioner is that of setting the policy, setting the budget, but the bigger job is that of vision and long-term strategic planning. It's really important that we look at our county as a whole and determine where are we going and how are we going to get there together. Right now, we see that Mason County is really in some transition. We've seen a change in what our economic identity is about. We see a restoration for the city of Shelton, and we see our outer areas in UGA, such as Belfair, that are growing and having some real growing pains. So as a part of that, I really think it's important that, again, looking at Shelton and Belfair, trying to determine who were we, who are we now, and where are we going? And I'd really like the opportunity to bring my experience as a criminal justice professional and as a fire commissioner to answering those questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Randy?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Randy Netherland. I am the county commissioner. People ask me quite often, again, why would I want to do it, especially again. Being a county commissioner can be very rough. It takes a lot of work. You have to study
everything you can possibly imagine, even things you couldn't imagine, then make decisions that sometimes people don't like. But they actually elect you to do all the work that they don't want to do, and you have to make the decisions based upon that. What happens at the end, though, is you have an opportunity to stand up and do something right that may have a huge impact on your community. And it's not just with thoughts or hopes or dreams. You actually have to put in effort. You actually have to make things happen, and you have to do the work that it takes to affect a change. A few examples. We're calling them growing pains, but right now we are getting bigger, we are moving. We've been able to reinvest in some of our community in a way that we never thought possible, even though we had to deal with the huge deficiencies in our budget, $2.2 million the first year, $3.2 million the second year. We had to find a way to reinvest into our law enforcement. For example, we had 8 new deputies that we've put forward, 6 new corrections officers, 45 new vehicles. Their budget in 2012 was $9.7 million. Now it's $14 million. That's a 44% increase. We found a way to do all that without raising your taxes over the last few years. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot more than just thoughts and hopes. Somebody has to go out and find the solutions, and they don't wait. You have to do it from day one. Day one, I walked in 15 minutes, a $2.2 million deficiency we had to find the answer to. Day one. It doesn't wait. We can plan while we're doing it. You're going to have to continue to plan, but you still got to make it work the whole time you are working there.
Thank you. First question to both candidates. Randy, we'll ask you to answer first, please. Some people believe that our county is really 2 or 3 counties with different issues facing the west, the north, and the south portions of our county. Do you agree with that? Why or why not? And what do you believe we should be doing to bring the county together?
Yes, I do believe that, but it's also a misnomer at the same time. I'll give you an example. Although we have 3 different identities, if not even more, because I can assure you Lilywop and Hoodsport don't seem to think they're the same either. Belfair, Shelton, even Allen and Belfair, they're just a stone's throw away from each other. They disagree and they want a different way of life for each other. But we're all interdependent when you're talking about the county. People don't want to, they think in the forms of Shelton, for example, being a city, and it has its 10,000 people and it has its own tax base. But for the county itself, their money stays in Shelton. Their taxes stay in Shelton. The whole county is subsidized by other parts of the county. Our law enforcement, our auditor, our treasurer, all the things that we do is subsidized by other entities like Belfair. If you took Allen and Grapeview and Matlock and Hoodsport and Lilywop, even Lilywop, put them all together, they don't come up to the amount of money that Belfair alone generates for the county. We have issues, as you've seen, with sewer, and everybody talks about being separate. But the truth of the matter is, if Belfair flops or anything happens to Belfair, there goes all your tax base for law enforcement and all the other things that we have in the community that we so badly need. We cannot live without each other. We need that tourism dollars for all those people that want to go to Cushman in order to go through Belfair. So yes, we have different identities, but we're dependent on each other for success.
Thank you. Kelly, you have 2 minutes.
So I know that many of us may refer to 3 and Pickering as the Mason-Dixon line. We have the North, we have the South, and we have those identities. And the one thing that I think is really important when we look at who and what we are as a county, and especially in this role of county commissioner, is that we look at how we solve the issues with regards to those things that plague most of the county, that are our government responsibilities, and primarily that is our public health and public safety. And it's important to recognize.
How do you do that?
I don't know how that. And so it's really important to recognize as we address these issues that they're all very much interconnected. Sorry about that. When we talk about problem solving for the entire county and trying to address the issues of identity, the things that do plague our county are those concerns of, are our families safe? What are the issues with mental health across the entire county? What are the issues of drug addiction, homelessness, economic? And we recognize that they're all actually interconnected. And so while we may have some of these community identities, the issues and the concerns and the responsibilities of the county are still the same no matter where we live. And so when we look at not only the problems, but the solutions, they do overlap. And so I think it's important that while we may have community identity, the solutions do need to be county-wide, and they do need to be interconnected.
Thank you. Randy, you have 1 minute.
Isn't it funny how Diedrich just proved our point? We're all interconnected, whether we like it or not. You know, one of the part of the question again was what were some of the solutions. You know, Patty over here, she kind of teases me a little bit because I wanted to keep a piece of land out there by the Pickering connection available for development. And they were talking about selling away the development rights at one point to put it into trust. And she teases me because, you know, where's that big development now? But, you know, someday, if we are going to have an opportunity to finally pull this county together, it's going to take building something in the middle of the county that everybody uses. You know, having an event center or maybe a fairgrounds or some other entity like that, even housing development or a Costco or a store, sometime in the middle of this county, that is one of the remedies that we may look forward to in order to pull us together and have us all work together for the good of the county as a whole.
Thank you, Randy. Our second question to both candidates, Kelly, I ask you to answer first, please. What do you consider to be the most important function or most important priority of county government, and how do you propose to tackle that function? And please be specific.
So the core of what government does, as I referenced back to, is primarily people look to government for public health, public safety, and roads and those services. Those are the core functions. And once again, I think that they are interconnected. I don't think we can separate public health and public safety without talking about each other. I think one of the issues when we talk about the big picture, when we look at the economic health, the mental and physical and emotional health of our community, they're interrelated. When our economy dies, we see more problems within homes, we see drug addiction, we see an exacerbation of all of those things that stress our families. And so in looking for those solutions, I really think it's important that as we look at a holistic plan, one of the probably prime examples is drug court, mental health court, and therapeutic courts. A lot of our community problems end up in our courts. It has become the answer to many of our issues in our community where other resources have failed. My experience in criminal justice is that as we have looked to the courts to solve our problems, such as in family court, criminal court, therapeutic courts, I'm a big supporter of that, because what that does is it treats the person, the family, and all of their issues as a whole. It looks at trying to heal the person from within. It's trying to support them so they become an employed and productive member back in community and back in their home and within their family. And so I do believe that if we're going to address some of these woes that do plague us, especially such as our opiate epidemic, then we do need to look at addressing and supporting those programs, both family recovery and other therapeutic programs in the court.
Thank you. Randy, you have 2 minutes.
And again, you know, the main function that everybody's wanting from us, though, is we can always say one thing, one issue like law enforcement, but the truth is they want their services. They want all their services. They want to be able to go down the highway, or I should say, the highways, by the way, they're the ones that have issues. Our county has some of the finest roads in the state of Washington, if you look at the county roads. City has some issues, but they're working on that, but the county roads are fantastic. But they want to make sure they can get home on those county roads. When the storms come out, they want to make sure that it's cleared off. When we're sitting there, they have an issue at their home, they want to make sure there's a law enforcement officer that shows up. Or if they arrest somebody, they want to make sure that they can go to court, or that they can even be put in jail if necessary. It's a giant puzzle that has to be put together, and being able to fund these things without raising taxes is one of the core beliefs of this community and desires that they hope that we will accomplish. You know, some of the things we were able to do for solutions, because you asked not just for our visions, but for the solutions, we've been able to find ways of bringing in new revenue into this county. We found different ways of reinvesting, for example, going out with our properties, selling them to realtors so we can start to bring money in. A while back we had somebody pressuring us to sell some property for a very low amount. I believe it was between $680,000 or $800,000, right in between there. I went out, we found that it had logs on it, so instead we did something they didn't want to do. One of our commissioners didn't want to do it. We went out for a non-binding bid. We got $1.28 million just for the logs on the property. Have it reforested in 30 years, we get to do it again. Another parcel at $94,000 for a subtitle, we ended up sending that out, finding new ways to bring in revenue, sending that out, and we're expecting in the next 2 to 3 years our first check for our share of the GUI duct for $3.7 million. The people expect us to give them their services without raising their taxes if at all possible, but most importantly to make sure that everybody shows up, the assessor to assess your property right, the treasurer to collect only what's necessary, and provide for them what they ask for.
Thank you, Randy. Kelly, you've got 1 minute.
So one of the issues in terms of when they talk about receiving services is an example I'll provide of that is with the fire districts. Right now, the business model for fire districts is changing. Over the years, fire districts were primarily fire responders, and then EMS became the scene. As we've done fire prevention, we've seen the need for those. We don't have houses burning down left and right anymore, and we see 80% to 85% of what fire districts do is EMS. Now, as we see a changing healthcare system, different demands are being placed on fire districts. So what we've done in response to that is to be progressive, to be out ahead of that curve and looking at unique business models, and that includes partnering up with private entities. You want to be able to look to both public and private stakeholders and having the key people at the table in order to make some really good opportunities to serve our public, to continue to provide public health and public safety.
Thank you. Now each candidate will have a chance to ask the other a question. Kelly, you'll pose a question to Randy first. Randy, you'll have 2 minutes to answer, and Kelly, you'll have 1 minute to respond.
So over the year of this campaign, it's been a little tough. And the one thing I do want to ask my opponent is that over the year, you've distorted some facts about the sheriff's office and claimed them as your own successes without taking responsibility for the jail crisis. You have claimed endorsements for people that actually did not give you their express consent. And finally, there's been issues with regard to the Belfair sewer in terms of alternatives, access to information, and long-term planning input. So I would like to know, with these issues looming out there, how are we to trust in your leadership?
Okay, let's hit the first one first. On distorting numbers on the sheriff's department, I don't understand that part of the question because the numbers are what the numbers are. With the auditor, those are the numbers. As for the jail, before I even, right after I came in, they had some issues with being able to handle or have women correction officers. When they lost that ability, we had to ship people out because they no longer had enough women to do that. In that process, we also, at their request, did an upgrade on the facility. And it's taken a while, but it's almost $2 million total for the total upgrade. That takes a while, and you're never going to get as many as we would like to be able to house there, but at least we are getting it and taking care of it. As for the sewer system, again, it's funny that you would even mention the sewer system on that and deficiencies. That whole system, before I ever came in, was tricked to even be able to work. It needs 125,000 gallons to operate daily. 125,000 gallons. Currently, it has about 45 to 60,000 gallons going in it. They have to trick it to make it work. That all happened before I got there. My thing is to try and make it work and find a way to get a financial solution so it doesn't bankrupt this county. Overall, you're looking at $1 million backwards that the county is on the hook for. And it was my work that actually put together a plan that got us out of trouble with the state auditor who was giving us a finding every single year because of it. It was my work that found a solution so that we can continue to move forward and continue to keep it from completely collapsing on this community and costing us jobs, taxes in a way that we never even imagined. Could you imagine if the stores like QFC, Safeway collapsed because they couldn't afford a $400 a month rate for a sewer system? Again, I'm the one that did the work and found a way to protect us from that, so I'm not sure what you would mean by the deficiencies.
May I respond?
Yes.
It wasn't the issues of deficiencies, it's the fact that there hasn't been any public input for the past year to year and a half. The sewer advisory did quite a bit of groundwork with regards to that, but my issue is that having access to that information on the website is not there, is absent. There hasn't been an ongoing public forum in order to talk about alternatives to that Belfair sewer financial plan. And with regards to the issues of the sheriff's office, I'm not necessarily talking about financial facts as much as there is the issue with the North Precinct that actually was in existence with a signed lease prior to your election, and those are the issues that I'm referring to.
Okay, thank you. Now, Randy, you can pose a question to Kelly. Kelly, you'll have 2 minutes to answer, and then Randy, you'll have 1 minute to respond.
Okay. As we discussed earlier on the bill for sewer, currently, if it's not built by 2017, this county is at risk of having them change grant money into loan money, of which we could never afford to pay that. There's just no possible way. We were looking at $1 million backwards, and we were getting a finding from the auditor because we had an insolvent financial plan. And you've made comment about not having access to the plan online. The plan itself did go through a public process. It actually was even sent to the auditor, and they gave their blessing to continue to move forward. But I want to remind you, it was my plan. I did all the work. At all those meetings, I never saw you there at any of them. So we're asking about my plan. What is your plan to fix it?
So my plan with regard to the Belfair sewer is that I do understand that right now the operating costs kind of equal what the ratepayer is, and that there's a lot of debt coming back. The one thing that I would like to look at and consider is the fact that this is a very, very large piece of infrastructure for the entire community. And a lot of communities at this point in time are realizing that it is overwhelming for one area, one UGA, one county. So many of them are looking at regional approaches, which is why you see regional jails, regional water systems, and regional sewer systems. What I would like to explore and consider is opening this up for other partners outside of just the Belfair area, looking across to Kitsap County to consider partnering with them. In addition to that, many times we see that there are engineering issues with regards to large systems, but are there mechanical changes that can be made to the sewer system that would allow it to accept septic and create greater effluent into the system, because it can't work as well because it's operating under capacity. So can you make mechanical changes that were less costly than an expansion of millions of dollars of additional infrastructure to actually bring in refuge, to bring in that kind of material to make it work much more efficiently?
And therein lies the problem again. We can dream and we can wish of a lot of things. We could look at this, but the truth of the matter is it's already in front of us. Has to be done. We took money that said that we will expand that system and fix and furnish sewer to the UGA. Absent of that, we have to pay. What are we going to do about that? We're $1 million backwards. We've already done some changes to where we're down to $800,000. We're about to go down to $6,000 with some refinancing. And still, though, we have to overcome these other issues of getting it out there to them. As for going up on top of the hill, we would love to, but if you haven't noticed, there's nothing been built up there in years, not in our area to be able to get to it. So we can dream of a lot of things, and we can stand here and have a lot of ideas. But now we're at the point 2017, if we don't start to get it done, somebody's going to pay for it. And all of Mason County is on the hook. Belfair doesn't exist. Belfair is an unincorporated area. The loans were all taken out by Mason County, and when it comes time to pay the bills, Mason County has to pay the bills, all of them, unless we find a way to get enough affluent coming to it and enough customers to fulfill the ecology's wishes on those loans.
Thank you. We'll now have closing statements. Kelly, you can go first. You have 1 minute.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for being here this evening and for the opportunity. I truly do believe that Mason County has a lot of really valuable resources. We have a lot of wonderful natural resources. We have a lot of wonderful people resources. Throughout this entire campaign, I've had a lot of opportunity to meet people I've known, I've never met before, and reconnect with people I haven't seen for years. I truly do believe that in order to work together to create a vision for this county. It means that many of us need to come together who would typically not be at the same table. I think it's really important as we develop our vision for the county that we find those who not only agree with where we want to go together, but to get those who may not necessarily agree so that we can get their input, their basically perspective, and compromise and find a plan together.
Thank you. Randy, you have 1 minute.
Again, thank you very much for having us here tonight, and thank you for considering either one of us or both of us. I hope when you make a decision for anybody you pick, not just for this seat, but for every seat that came before you tonight, that it's their actions and what they actually will do or have done that you will look at. To piggyback on something my opponent had mentioned, on the precinct up in Belfair, when I first came in, I was sat down by Casey Salisbury, and he says, in order to make this, instead of to a full functioning precinct, instead of a subsection of it, we need to have 3 deputies. We need to have a chief position switched over to be an administrative chief. We need to have lieutenant positions. We also need to have this, this, and this. And within the first year, we made each one of those things happen in order to change it from a substation to a precinct. It was actions that make these things happen. Again, as I pointed out, we're looking at the investment that we've given into that sheriff's department. But aside from that, imagine, you may not know this, but right now you can go ahead and build a garage and you don't have to get a permit if it's 24 by 24 or less, or up to 24 by 36. Things get done. I've been able to get them done. Please consider me for re-election this time around.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
I now would like to welcome up Kevin Shetty and Rosalind Reed, please, who are both running for Mason County Commissioner, District 2. Again, the format will be a 2-minute answer, a 2-minute response, and then a 1-minute rebuttal. We'll have a 2-minute opening statements. Kevin, you'll please begin.
Thanks, John. Thanks to everybody for coming out tonight, and appreciate Diedrich broadcasting this on Mason Web TV and on Hood Canal Communications. It's great to once again be in front of the voters of Mason County to talk about what I think are 2 competing interests for the future of Mason County. And as this campaign emerged, there has been some key differences that have come up between my opponent and me that I think will really separate us in terms of where we want to see Mason County go. My opponent is more of a career candidate, has been on the ballot almost 10 times in the past 8 years. I'm a career public servant. I work in the state legislature and I work on behalf of Mason County on issues affecting us locally and regionally. I served on the county's Planning Advisory Commission. I've worked on writing policy that is going into effect in this county on issues including the shoreline management program and our comprehensive plan update, which is absolutely critical to growth in Mason County and us achieving what we need to achieve to be a growing and thriving county. And so tonight I'm here once again to ask for your vote, ask for your support, and here to answer questions about how we best move Mason County forward.
Thank you. Rosalind?
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, tonight. Kevin gave a good introduction of who I am. I'm a very busy person, and yes, I have been on the ballots. I'm also on the Hood Canal School Board, and that explains some of those opportunities on the ballot. I've got over 20 years of federal level program and management experience. I've been a volunteer in the community for the last 21 years. So I think I've got a lot to offer to the county position. It is a government position. I've got the experience for stepping into that, also the skills that lend themselves well to being a county commissioner. I would appreciate your vote and your support, and I can promise that I'll do a good job and I'll work very hard for you.
Thank you. First question to both candidates. Rosalind, I'll ask you to answer first, please. Many elected officials take office with a first 100-day plan. What do you plan to accomplish in your first 100 days if elected to commissioner?
Well, I've been attending the budget briefings recently, and interestingly enough, some of the issues that are coming up were there back in 2010 when I used to attend them. So obviously, the first 100 days is going to have to be implementing what the current commissioners are coming up with. I think we've got some real issues out there, and there are several things to work on, but my three main reasons to run is education, the environment, and the economy. I've been on the school board for about 6 years now, and I see firsthand that our numbers fluctuate throughout the year. Families move here, they like it here, and they take jobs somewhere else, take their kids out of our school. And then on the other end of the spectrum, as we age into Medicare, people actually are more healthier than they were years ago. So unfortunately, though, they're leaving for healthcare reasons. So I would like to see, I know it's not a function of the Mason County Commissioner, but I would like to see us do something that causes jobs to stay here. And if that includes working with the hospital and working with the healthcare system, figure out how we can cause our people to stay here.
Thank you. Kevin, you have 2 minutes.
Thanks. So I think it's important that we have a commissioner who is focused on what the role of commissioner is and is working towards fulfilling those obligations. And so one of the things in the first, hard to say the first 100 days, but in the early beginnings of the next commission, I think it's important that we take a look at our comprehensive plan. That's something that's being updated right now by our County Planning Advisory Commission. It's something that I've already been working on. And one of the things that was decided recently was that it was only their work was only going to focus on what was mandated by state law in order to pass review at the Department of Commerce. I simply think that we need to look at all of the aspects of our comprehensive plan so that we can focus our work over the next years. That comprehensive plan is a 10-year plan for Mason County, and it's critical that we address that because that is going to determine what we do in terms of job growth. 8.4% unemployment here in Mason County, still well above our neighbors in Kitsap and Thurston County. Not good enough. We can do better. I believe we can do better as we take a look at the policies and regulations that we have in place in order to spur economic development. I think when we look at the issues surrounding the opioid crisis in our county, it's not just Mason County, it's a regional and statewide issue. I'd like to work with our legislators and on that issue. There's one treatment center on the Olympic Peninsula for people that are struggling with opioid addiction. I think we can do better in terms of that public health crisis by working with Evergreen Treatment Centers, who's the only one. It's in Grays Harbor County. So you're asking people to go 6 days a week for their treatment outside of this county. I think we should work with them to find a way to get a facility here in Mason County. And so I think if we begin to address those issues, those are going to be my priorities in the first 100 days.
Thank you. Rosalind, you have 1 minute.
Well, I think we should stick with what county commissioners do, and I don't know that it's that. I think we need to support it and make sure we give the people who have those responsibilities the resources they need to do that. Surprisingly enough, it sounds like Randy has gotten us plenty of money to work with, which is kind of interesting. But I think that sticking with what the county is supposed to be doing, providing those services and making sure that we have the right people in the right jobs. One of my background areas is HR. And that's a big concern of mine, is if people don't have the skills and abilities to do their job, we end up with some problems. And that even includes county commissioners. So county commissioners should be qualified for the job also.
Thank you. Second question to both candidates. Kevin, we will ask you to answer first, please. Our county's unemployment rate is over 8%. Nearly half of our working residents commute to jobs outside of Mason County. We know you both support bringing more jobs to Mason County, but what specific action would you propose to bring more living wage jobs here, and how do your ideas differ from your opponents?
Well, first off, I think my ideas differ from my opponents because I proposed ideas. So one of the things that I think we need to do in order to address our 8.4% unemployment is we need to look again at our regulatory codes here in Mason County. I think we also need to look at expanding our training and education opportunities. I've talked a lot on this campaign about partnering with Olympic College. My wife is an adjunct professor with Olympic College. She works in that system. It's something that we're just celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Shelton branch of Olympic College. Let's expand those programs. Let's get people that are unemployed and underemployed into those program so that they get the job training they need to be successful in our new economy, so that nobody's left behind in our economy. So those are some of the steps that I think we should take right away. And then, frankly, we need to do better at recruiting new employers to Mason County. We heard, time and time again tonight, sort of kind of a message of where's the development, and when is this going to happen? Well, we've been waiting a long time for projects like the Belfair Bypass. We've been waiting a long time for projects like Shelton Hills. It's time to stop waiting, and it's time to start acting. And that's exactly what I'll do in order to help get our unemployment back to where it should be, back in line, and get people working.
Thank you. Rosalind?
Well, I don't think we differ all that much. I think one thing that we should consider is taking care of that Belfair sewer problem by encouraging more businesses in that area. I would look to our elected officials at the state level and even the national level. I've been in politics since 2004, and I know the people who have been elected, people who are elected, and people who are going to be elected. So I think with that ability, I should be able to do more than just lobby our state offices and see what we can do within our own budget. We do need to take care of our infrastructure, and infrastructure meaning our policies, procedures, things that keep people from doing business here easily. I've talked with a business owner happened to be Hoodsport. Why did it take so long to get his business up and running? And he was still having problems with our planning department. So even though we've made some changes over the years, I think we still have some issues that we need to deal with, and I think I'm better qualified to determine what those are and help out. And like I say, I think emphasis on the North Mason area with some businesses that'll help take care of the Belfair sewer, and I think our state representatives can help us with that.
Thank you. Kevin, you have 1 minute.
Sure. So, I think when we look at the issues that we're facing here, we do need to get better on the county government level and become more efficient. One of the issues that we have in the planning department is that we're using technology that in some cases is 30 years old. Imagine going back in time and using a computer that you used in 1986 in order to make things happen in 2016. So I will be looking for ways to invest in our county employees. They do a good job with limited resources, so I'll be finding ways to invest in them, get that technology infrastructure up so that they have the tools and resources to be effective and efficient, so that when you come into the planning department and you have plans to expand your business, or you want to come in here and you want to build a business, that we get out of your way and we say, well, look, we're gonna make this a simple process, a streamlined process for you, and we have the tools and resources to do it. So I'll be looking for ways to invest in our county employees so that they have what they need to get that job done for you.
Thank you. Now, each candidate will have the chance to ask each other, their opponent, a question. Kevin, you'll pose a question to Rosalind first. Rosalind, you'll have 2 minutes to answer, and then Kevin, you will have 1 minute to respond. Your question, please.
Sure. So, Rosalind, you've claimed both on Facebook and on your website that as a member of the Hood Canal School Board, you've achieved a 100% graduation rate. A little bit of digging on that. OSPI, the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, doesn't track middle school graduation rates. But what they do track is adequate yearly progress for our school districts, and Hood Canal is not meeting the AYP requirements put forth by the state. So what are you basing the 100% graduation rate on? And is it appropriate to say that 100% graduation rate is happening without meeting those requirements?
Well, I think that is a good question. We have hired a superintendent who actually has helped us make some changes in the school. We've, I think, across the state, we have a lot of schools that are not meeting it, and part of the problem is the criteria that the state is using. We're going to rely on the state representatives again, who are also going to take care of our McCleary problem, and not only not interfere with local schools on what we can and can't do in schools, but give us the support that we need to make those things happen. We need to take care of unfunded mandates and things like that. So when we set standards and we expect the kids to make it, and they make it, then that happens, and that's what happened last year. And I think it's the first time that we've had 100%. Yes, I agree that AYP is a problem, but it's not just a problem for Hood Canal School.
Great, and I appreciate that. before I got into politics, I was a classroom teacher myself, and so I taught in a high poverty, high crime neighborhood, and I understand the struggles that our schools face, and I appreciate the work that you're doing on that. I'm not sure where the 100% comes from, if that's not a trackable statistic from the state, and also what that is based on. So I appreciate your answer.
Thank you. Now, Rosalind, you can pose a question to Kevin, please. Kevin, you'll have 2 minutes to answer. Rosalind, you will have 1 minute to respond.
Okay, Kevin, back in March when you announced your run for this position, you stated you wanted to continue Tim Sheldon's legacy. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Sure, and that's not a direct quote there. What I said was Tim Sheldon has been on the commission for a number of years, and he has been one of the only stable voices throughout that period who has not left the seat. And so what I've actually said is that I'm ready to bring a new voice to the county commission. I think it's time that we move away from the voices of the past, and we start to move forward and build a brighter future for Mason County. So I am my own candidate. I've run a campaign that is my own, and on the issues that I think are important facing Mason County. And so I'm not Tim Sheldon's candidate, and Tim Sheldon isn't running this year, guys. So as much as we might want to make this election about Tim Sheldon, it's me standing up here, not Tim Sheldon. And so I think it does a disservice to Mason County and the voters here to say, let's bring Tim Sheldon into this. No, this is about Kevin Schutte, and this is about Mason County's future.
Thank you. Rosalind, you have 1 minute.
According to the newspaper article, which I have a copy here that I'll share with you if you need it, you said, I think Commissioner Sheldon has provided a stable voice and he certainly brings experience, and I want to pick up where he left off. And that's where your quote ended. But under Sheldon's, I think, 15 years as a commissioner, you've also said we have 8% unemployment, the fairgrounds have closed, we have an opioid epidemic, increased crime, the parks budget has been gutted, and the Belfair sewer happened on his watch. I'm not sure you've been here long enough to understand the county issues. I thought we both agreed we need to take the county in a different direction, and I think I'm better qualified to do that.
Thank you. Now we'll have closing statements. Be 1 minute. Kevin, you can go first, please.
Sure. Well, again, it's an honor to be here and stand in front of you and ask for your vote. I'm sure Tim Sheldon is in Potlatch, and if he wants to run for something, he can come down here and ask for your vote too. Unfortunately for my opponent, he's not standing here, and she can't continue to run against Tim Sheldon. It's a disservice to you, and you deserve better. And so that's what I provided here tonight, is a different vision, a vision that is not something that comes from a career candidate, something that comes from the perspective of public service. As your next county commissioner from District 2, my job is going to be to work for a stronger economy, safer neighborhoods, and expand opportunity for each and every one of you, those who vote for me and those who don't vote for me. And that's exactly what I'm going to give you. I'm ready to do this job on day one, and I appreciate your support, and I hope I can count on your vote. Ballots are out this week.
Thank you. Rosalind?
Again, thank you for inviting us here tonight, and I think that I can say that I do have the experience to do this job. I have the interest in doing this job. I was born here in Shelton, came back about 21 years ago, became a chronic volunteer, and have been putting my time and effort into the community, and it means a lot to me, because this is where my family is from. And when I came back here and noticed that things hadn't changed a whole heck of a lot, I got involved, and I intend to do that. I will continue doing that. I look forward to your vote, and like I said, I'll work hard for you, and I'll do a good job. Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thanks.
I'd like to thank all the candidates, the audience, and our partners, the Chamber, the Journal, Hood Canal Communications, and Web TV. Y'all have a great evening.
Thanks for watching Mason Web TV, powered by HCC.